Dr. Doohan, the following questions are assuming distancing protocols, modifications to normal operating to accommodate COVID concerns. So I don't think we need to get into those precautions for each of the types of activities. But if you could give the public some guidance, I have about a dozen on the list. 4th of July, will 4th of July be canceled as far as gatherings?
I think we have to wait to see what the governor says about what size of gatherings will be allowed. And my sense, again, without knowing, is that we are not going to be going back to allowing large gatherings, but I don't know what the number will be. I made a guess when I made my opening statements of less than 18.
Understood. So the parade style public gatherings, those are off the table this year. And the reason I ask is so that the organizers can prepare to cancel.
Hard to imagine that the governor is going to allow those to occur.
County fair, I imagine the same.
Hard to imagine that would occur because also the tourism that's involved.
Right. Weddings with a cap of the 18 that you suggested earlier. I know it's not it's an approximation. Do you see?
It's a guess, but yeah. I would think that we were going to see events being live streamed with a small group together and then others participating from a distance being a new model in these pandemic days.
Understood. I assume music events, concerts, and the like, sports events, those are all in the same category of approximately 18, some reasonable cap. Otherwise, it'll be by video.
I would doubt that we'll see contact sports occurring.
Wine tasting, is that classified as a bar? I know you've said bars probably not, at least for a few months, maybe through the year. Would that include wine tasting, for example, small tasting rooms along Highway 128 with ample outdoor space? Is there some leeway on those businesses bringing suggested protocols forward, or do you see that that's not likely to reopen no matter what the protocols are?
And I appreciate framing this, that we're assuming social distancing and we're assuming facial coverings and hand washing stations. But what we also have to keep in mind is transmission. So wine tasting, I see as a tourism activity. And in as much as you could do it without it being involving tourism, it seems that it could be done safely because you certainly could have social distancing. But my concern is that it is generally a tourism activity. I think that's my view of it. Maybe I'm wrong, but
would you think those businesses should prepare for not reopening this season?
I think in as much that they could open without it being related to tourism, I think it could be possible to have wine tasting as long as there was social distancing.
For example, taking bookings from county residents only, would that qualify?
It seems like that would make sense.
Restaurants, I know the governor has talked about half seating, removing half the tables.
Which seems like a very good idea. And I really liked hearing this idea of, helping restaurants move into a new space of doing deliveries and preparing food for people in other ways. But I certainly would want to see restaurants be able to open with the types of guidance the governor gave about. Certainly outdoor seating is a protective measure, and the spacing and not having shared condiments and so on.
What about lodging? I know you talked about potential modifications, doing a 14-day quarantine first before visitors get out and enjoy shopping and recreation. 14-day, I don't know how many visitors stay longer than 14 days. My guess is not many. A lot of people come here for a weekend or for a fraction of a week. Do you see lodging opening in the next 3 months?
For tourism?
Normal style bookings?
For tourism, then.
Yeah.
So, there was a very good comment that came in when I was doing an interview on KZYX from a person who lives in county but off the grid and says, she uses hotels to come to town, charge her phone, take a shower. I think that in as much as we can open up our businesses for people in the county and essential, we're going to move away from using terms like essential and non-essential work. But, we are aware that, for example, PG&E workers are staying in hotels. We need to keep them open for those functions. But as much that we can continue to have lodging for the people in our county or extended stays, that seems like that addresses that whole issue of concern about transmission.
So what I hear is a theme of we don't want to bring visitors. We don't want to focus on the tourist economy. The danger here is if we don't tell lodging, if we know lodging will not open this visitor season and we don't tell the industry, it'll be a worse outcome because they won't be preparing for what's to come. So I think the guidance you're giving is don't anticipate lodging opening for tourism this season.
And I appreciate the opportunity to share the work I do with Rancho, the Rural Association of Northern California Health Officers, where every conversation we have, this is the focus. What are we going to do about our northern rural communities where we don't seem to have widespread community transmission at this time, and we rely on tourism? So probably the single unifying theme across the rural counties. And generally, we're all really grappling with this very, very difficult issue and wanting to try and limit tourism to the extent that we can while allowing our communities to survive this pandemic. So I think it's going to take some creativity on the part of the industry. I'm eager to hear from the industry. What do you suggest? Because, of course, if they have a family come from the Bay Area and spread COVID in their whole hotel, they'll be down for another reason, which is everyone will be sick. So I'm sure they are just as concerned as we all are. So I'm eager to hear the solutions that come from the industry leaders in the lodging tourism industry.
But does that mean there's some leeway to open within the next 90 days for tourists?
As I said, the only thing I've been able to think of with my limited knowledge of tourism, being a family doctor and a health official, has been the idea that people could quarantine. But maybe there will be rapid testing by that time where I don't know what this landscape will look like, but you could imagine people being tested, and if we have widespread testing, they'd be able to test and show that they don't have COVID and then be able to stay for an extended stay. It's hard to imagine people coming for 2 days from the Bay Area and then going back to the Bay Area again and not being safe.
Okay. Bookstores, I imagine bookstores will be considered retail, and retail is first phase with precautions. Is that right?
I would hope to see bookstores. In my first sheltering in place order, I wanted to see quality of life businesses stay open, art stores, craft stores, bookstores. And I definitely would like to see those open as well with social distancing protocols. Personal
services. I'm thinking hair, nails, massage, the types of personal services where precautions can be taken, masks can be worn, but there is, by the nature of the service, less distancing. Are those potential for phase one if proposals are brought to you, or do we need to wait?
That particular area, I think, is very controversial. I want to see what the governor does. I think that, again, with my just imagining how it might be possible without knowing what the governor will do, I'm thinking that having something like a much more limited number of clients coming in, so you don't have multiple people in the salon at the same time, and you can do temperature checks, temperature checks are not great because we know now that people can be infectious but not symptomatic for 48 hours before they develop symptoms, but at least it would limit the spread. So I think we need to wait on that one.
Okay. Church gatherings?
Well, again, this will be determined by the gathering size that the governor approves. So I don't know, but I do believe there is going to be the allowance for gatherings of some size. And I believe that what will happen is we'll see an expansion of the live streaming that we started, where I said it needed to be limited to 4 people. We've already, the churches have already, the faith-based organizations have already been doing that, which I really appreciate. And I'm hoping that those gatherings will be able to be bigger. And you would want to keep in mind that those frail elders would be very risky for them to come. And so I hope that in those settings, there would be an effort to really make those experiences, those faith experiences, meaningful to those who do still need to shelter in place and stay home because of their age and potentially their frail health.
You mentioned schools earlier, schools reopening and services for children, trying to mitigate the effects on the next generation. I understand that schools are not closed because of the county health order today. Do you see schools opening before the next school year?
All of the conversation that I'm hearing is that we want to see children, activities for children resume. This is based on the fact that children do not seem to be seriously affected overall by COVID, although we know that they could be reservoirs, if we want to just use that public health term, to infect elders. So we still want to make sure, this is why we have the social distancing and the sheltering in place for people over 65 to the extent possible, likely to continue. But we do want to see, I mean, universally across the board with all the conversations that I have, governor level, Abajo, Rancho, we want to see children's activities resume. What we're talking about is stable groups. There's stable groups of 10, stable groups of 12. In other words, you'd have children of a certain cohort, group size, with perhaps one or two teachers, and they stay together long term. It's kind of that, think of that old fashioned schoolhouse model of teaching. And we already are seeing that in the current orders with childcare, that it's a stable group of 12. So I think we will see summer camps, activities for children opening up in that way with stable group size and a limited number of teachers.
If a school were to bring forward a proposal today to limit to that 10 or 12 with staggered times.
I'm sorry, I missed the beginning of your statement.
If a school were to bring to you today a proposal with limiting of 10 or 12 that stay together and staggered times, is the door open to consider the proposal?
I think we have to wait for the governor, because it was the governor, as I recall, who closed the schools.
Right. Camps. Are you thinking only day camps for locals, or does this include sleepaway for out-of-town guests?
Well, I think sleepaway for out-of-town guests, again, you'd be in this situation where you would be worried about transmission. If it was a small camp and it was just 12 kids and one counselor, you would take the risk that you would have an outbreak, but it would be mitigated by that small pod. I mean, more and more, I think we're thinking about, pods, pods of a bigger size, but then if you have an outbreak, it's contained within that pod. That's the thinking.
Fishing is open now. It's food production. It's never been against the state or county orders. But practically for the small fishermen who need launch ramps, they're effectively closed. I know salmon season opens on the 1st. Would it be appropriate, given that this is not against our orders, to have the county maybe through a letter clarify that those ramps can in fact be open, whether the fishing is commercial or for personal use? It's not prohibited today.
I would like to see that happen. What is prohibited is tourism style fishing, where people are going on I'm sorry, I don't know the exact term, but it's a fishing boat where people come
sport fishing,
party boats.
As part of a tourism, which we love to see that occurring, but we are focusing on allowing fishing for food.
Okay.
That should be able to occur.
And then my last item is real estate. And it's been equated to folks can go to drive over to Ukiah and go to Walmart where it's packed, no social distancing. But a real estate agent showing a house that's been empty for a day or two to one potential buyer has been seen as a risk. Is that likely to change in phase 1?
I think real estate is going to be opening up. We do allow real estate now to show houses. It's with some limitations, and I would lift up the realtors came forward with guidance that I thought was really helpful as an industry. They came forward with that guidance, and I used that guidance to allow for real estate in my last sheltering in place order, or to allow some loosening of restrictions. So I think real estate is going to be allowed in a more fully or less restricted way in the next governor's orders.
I appreciate that. And then to wrap up, what do you see as the time range to return to full normal? Maybe it won't be exactly what we had before COVID, but whatever our new normal is that 3 months out? Is that a year out? What's your best guess based on the science and what you're hearing from partners throughout the state?
I'm very sad to say that what I'm hearing across the board is a year to 18 months before we're seeing life going back to normal in our world, in our country, in our state.
That being the case, one of the arguments, and this is more for perhaps the incident commander, Carmel Angelo, one of the problems that we're seeing across the county is we have local residents trying their best to follow the orders to a T in most cases. And they look out their window and they see visitors coming in, either coming here to shop or visitors wanting to get into recreation, thinking that they're shut down, it's vacation. And it's we have this double standard going on where, due to lack of enforcement, it's the locals that are suffering and giving up their normalcy while they're watching visitors get to enjoy it. What is our plan for enforcement? I would think either we back off on some of the regulation, or we decide it's necessary and we actually enforce it. But this in between isn't setting well for a lot of people. And then that was my last question. Chair Haschek, thank you for letting me go beyond my 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you for the